Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the anchorman of the Federation, the doctor of dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Welcome to the Mega Particle Podcast. I am your gracious and humble host, Jonathan Wiegand, like the man said, streaming to you across the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. And we are back, large and in charge. We took a hiatus. You know, some podcasts call these like seasons, like, oh, we're on season 1 and season 4 and all this. No, we don't do that. I just randomly take hiatuses, and then I have fans questioning me, hey, did you stop? Like, are you not doing the podcast anymore? And have a good, close, long-time listener of the podcast named Jason constantly annoying me about when I'm going to put out my next episode. I'm checking my text now. He has not sent me anything today, but he has been sounding the alarm, lighting the beacons of Gondor, saying we need more OPP, and I'm here to quench that thirst. We've had some tumultuous times in the past. Maybe how long have we been off, Luna? 3-4 months? Had a little bit of hectic scenes here in the United States. I know we have a lot of foreign listeners in Germany and in England, of course. And for the German fans, go Bayern Munich. Yes. What is that? Borat? Was that a Borat voice? Yeah, I'm a Bayern Munich fan. So anyway, it has been a lot. We've had an election. We've been healthcare CEOs on the street getting shot. We've had Luigi's getting found out at McDonald's with that. And it's been a lot. But I've taken the time off just to spend more time with work and spend more time with family. It's good to be back. This is one hobby that I absolutely love and adore. It is a passion of mine. When I was 7 years old, I was practicing stand-up in my bedroom and wanted to be the main guy of the Tonight Show, be the host of the Tonight Show. So I was like, you know what? Let's do Star Trek podcast because that totally tracks. And here we are 30 plus years later. And I'm, again, just very happy and thrilled to be here. And thank you so much for listening and sticking by the podcast for all these years. I think we're going on, year 4, Luna? Yeah. Luna, the intern, everybody. We're going on year 4, so I appreciate all of the interns and staff we have here. It's hard work, and boy, it's been a ride. But in the world of Star Trek, we've had a lot go on. We're sadly about to say goodbye to Lower Decks, which crushes my heart because it's a show for Trekkies. Now, not saying that non-Trekkies or people that have never watched Star Trek can't enjoy it, but there's so many little jokes, and it's just it's made with love that it's going to be sad to see go. However, hopefully we'll get some new stuff. The Section 31 movie is going to be legit, coming out next month in January. We're going to do a review on that when it comes out. And I feel like we have a little bit of hopeful with Star Trek Academy around the corner, but we'll see. You never know. We have a high bar with our Star Trek that we love, and the fan base will tell you if it's not good. Luna, did you hear about this one story? I was thinking about making like a news and brews, but I was like, we'll just do this one in this episode instead. This is a lot more fun. But there was a woman apparently in New Jersey. So check this out. Her license plate, her real license plate was NCC 1701, which of course is the Enterprise. And so apparently all these novelty plates in New Jersey and around have been like running stop signs, running red lights, not paying tolls, whatever. And so she's like racked up like thousands and thousands of dollars in all these fees because there's just a lot of like Trek fans with novelty plates kind of screwing her over. And it made me do this really deep dive of trying to find a Virginia novelty plate with like maybe something like Klingon or like 1701 or Borg Cube or something. And literally, I couldn't find a freaking thing. It is like, what the hell? Like, everything's gone. So if you are a Star Trek fan in Virginia with a novelty license plate, screw you. Because I don't know how you got it. I don't know if you inherited this novelty Star Trek license plate, but I don't know how you got it, but I would love to get one day. A good one, not one that makes sense, not something off the wall. But either way, going down a rabbit hole, today we are talking about transporters. I know for me, I love deep diving into these metaphysical questions that Star Trek raises. This is kind of the top tier when it talks about the deep, what is a soul, what is a human being, what makes up who we are, plus also the technical aspect of it, of transporter technology. And I don't want to be like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. If you've never seen that movie, it's gross. He turns into a fly that can have sex all night. Either way, it's the 80s horror movie, but it's like when I think of transporter technology, it's either The Fly or I'm like killing myself and then regenerating again, kind of like what Lieutenant Broccoli was talking about in TNG. And so we're going to cover all that today. I'm excited to deep dive into this great, meaty Star Trek context. We're starting off with a bang, coming back from our little hiatus with all guns blazing, all phasers armed, red alert. We're ready to go. And so without further ado, Luna, let's roll that beautiful bean footage. As we all know, Star Trek's been around quite a long time. It has many cultural and tentacles into almost everything pop culture of our day. And one of the biggest kind of flags of that is this embracing new technology. Oh, the iPad, Star Trek came up with that. Or the, remember those like Google Lens glasses? Like, okay, the Dominion and Star Trek came up with that. And so now we have transporters, and that's kind of been the big question across tech is, are we ever going to get transporter technology where we can just go from one part of the country to the other? I know there's a couple instances in DS9 where they talk about going to school in Starfleet Academy, Cisco going to school in Starfleet Academy, and then transporting home to New Orleans every night. I'm like, that would be really cool, because I would live in some cool places, or even at remote work. I would go and like remote work somewhere wild and then just come home and hang out. I think that would be really cool. In the concept of it, and it's in the very nature, is that it's a theoretical transfer of matter or energy from one point to another without traversing the physical space between them. So in other words, you're traveling from one place to another without traveling the distance. And it's just pure fiction. So it's just pure fiction. Like I don't think there's any way we can do it, or any way somebody's come up with it. And then ultimately, do you want to be that person that does? You'd be the first like guinea pigs of 5 or 10 people that do it. Either way, we've all heard the famous phrases, beam me up, Scotty, energize, and all the great lines that Star Trek has. And if you're new to Star Trek, this is pretty basic. Like every society in Star Trek has transporter technology. If you've ever watched Enterprise, the very first show, they don't have that. They have it, but they're kind of freaked out to use it. They mainly use it for cargo, and they still use shuttle pods for all the transportation on and off the ship, so which is pretty wild. This whole concept of how they came up with transporter technology, you think, oh, it must have been, something really wild and really cool, and was so forward-thinking, that Gene Roddenberry, but it was actually a way to save money. That was the whole point of it, is because the idea of getting a transportation method on the Enterprise, building another set, and then onto this planet, which a lot of times they filmed either in studios or other like studio sets or like outside. So they would always have to have this kind of shuttle pod, I guess, and it was going to cost a lot of money. So to save money, they came up with the transporter technology, where they could just be like, all right, stand with your arms like this. All right, and we'll like in a couple of days we'll go film in this field, and you go stand with your arms like this, and then okay, you're there. And transporter was born. I love that story because it's just, you gotta save money, and even back then, the studio was penny pinching, so crap. But it's one of the times where, hey, this actually worked out. And along with warp drive, this transporter technology is, to me, one of the most interesting science, sci-fi aspect of the entire show. And I mean, just think about it. You can go from one point in the universe to another in a split second. That's really sweet. Traveling, no getting on planes, no driving. It's just, boom, you're there. And I would love that idea. But let's get down into the specifics before we break down into the metaphysical kind of deeper questions. Deeper and deeper. If you understand that reference, hats off to you. Do I need to explain? Okay, so there was this really obese man on this, I guess it was South. Why are we talking about this? Anyway, so there's this really obese man on this flight. I guess it was like a Korean Air flight a couple years back. And he wanted the stewardess to like wipe him because he pooped himself and he couldn't clean himself. And so he wanted the stewardess to do it. And I had a group of friends that were more like family started making this joke of deeper and deeper, like deeper and deeper. Like we got to go deeper and deeper. And somehow the Papa John's guys tied into it. I don't know if you're, thank you for listening to this podcast. Either way. So, so we're going to go deeper and deeper. And do you know the best kind of jokes are the ones you have to explain, ladies and gentlemen? So either way, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the specifics. So fortunately, the Star Trek franchise has a lot of actual manuals and blueprints for the design and technology that exist in the Trek universe. And when I say a lot, I am not making that up. The main reference that we're going to be talking about today comes from the TNG technical manual, because it is the only one that I could actually find or get my hands on that offers detailed enough information about the transporter device. So how does the transporter actually work? Well, according to the TNG manual, it describes the process in detail. First, the transporter locks onto a target and programs the coordinates of the destination. Then it scans the image to be transported, dematerializes it, quote unquote, holds it in a pattern buffer for a while, and then transmits the matter stream in an annular confinement beam to its destination. Is everyone still with us? Okay. Thus, the transporter sends out the matter along with the information. And you might say, all right, you got how it works, then what's left out to figure? And the problem is, throughout 7 shows and 13 movies, and I mean, there's even more, but let's not get into that. There's a lot of inconsistencies with the transporters. And again, I always give leniency to the writers and to people on the show, because you know what? They probably in their minds never thought that there would be a man sitting in the East Coast of the United States in a little bunker for Star Trek, picking apart well, actually, in episode 48 of The Next Generation, they used transport. They never thought that. They were just kind of like being writers and trying to come up with cool concepts and cool plot lines and character development. They never thought about the actual deep down specifics. So I give them a little bit of grace. You know, I love this fandom, but you know, let's give a little bit of grace, people, because they didn't know. Now, I don't give that same grace to like people in writing Strange New Worlds, because you should know better, because you know there's going to be people like me and probably people like you listening that are going to be going through this with a fine-tooth comb. I digress, but heck, let's get back into it. So let's look at a little bit of the inconsistencies in the franchise, shall we? In the original series episode, The Enemy Within, an alien ore interacted with the transporter on board, and it resulted in a malfunction, and it actually caused Captain Kirk to be duplicated, splitting him in 2 entities with 2 distinct characters. One was good and one was evil. And at the end of the episode, the crew was able to reintegrate the 2 disparaging sides of Captain Kirk back into one person. See how that's done, Captain Janeway? You don't gotta kill anybody. That's a Tuvix joke for anybody listening. So this variation of the splitting phenomenon also happened to Will Riker as well on TNG. There was a massive energy surge in the distortion field around the planet Norvala 4 at the exact moment Riker was trying to beam out, and the transporter chief couldn't compensate, and he tried to do a second confinement beam. In other words, Riker's matter stream split into 2 beams. However, Riker's pattern maintained its integrity by just the one contaminated beam, and the second beam reflected back to the surface, somehow materialized there, resulting in another Riker. So the first Riker returned safely to his ship, and then that's the Riker we all know and love in TNG, And the second Riker stayed on the planet and lived alone for 8 years. And apparently was completely fine. That's the only thing I don't like about the episode is like, he's been living alone away from human beings and any type of civilization for 8 years. Yeah, I'm completely fine. No problem whatsoever. Completely integrate back into society in like 20 minutes, tops. So I'm like, all right. Again, I digress. I've had like 3 or 4 months with all this Trek knowledge. I just have to throw it up everywhere. So anyway, going back to the transporter. So with Riker, if the transporter words, let's say that 5 times fast, both the matter stream and the information signal, it suggests that the number of atoms you end up must be the same with the number you began with. Hence, the splitting phenomenon is actually impossible to happen. On the other hand, though, if the transporter only beamed the information that one system carries, then we can imagine that it can make as many versions of us as possible. So that's terrifying. We could have 1 million, Rikers on Nirvala 4 or on the ship, or it just... So there's ways of it being impossible, and then ways of it, there's only one matter stream that have it. There's multiple copies of us. Like the 1990s hit, is it Multiplicity with Kevin, he played Batman. What's his name, Luna? Kevin Costner? No, that's the guy from Yellowstone. No, it's Kevin Costner. Yeah. No. This is a Star Trek podcast. Why am I talking about 90s comedies that no one probably knows? Because I can. Shut up. Anyway, this also happens in TNG. So if the subject is to beam out in the form of quote-unquote pure energy, like Captain Picard does in the episode The Lonely Among Us, due to a life form that essentially is an energy pattern that inhibits his body. So rewind a little bit. Picard's energy pattern wandered around and eventually made it back into the ship's system, and then Data attempted to recombine Picard's energy pattern since his physical pattern is stored in a pattern buffer. So Picard materializes on the transporter pad because you've had his physical pattern in the buffer, and then you had his actual energy pattern floating around, and then you were able to combine them into two. So that, again, is both terrifying because could an energy pattern that is not you inhabit your body, I guess, in the buffer, and then somebody has your body, but it's not you? Okay. And again, giving some grace to the writers, it's quite unclear on what happened with Picard when he beamed out in this pure energy form, because Picard even only had a vague memory of the whole experience. But we can conclude that an individual can only be materialized if their physical pattern is also stored. What would happen if, say, we throw out the pattern stream into the vastness of space? What would that person be? And this is when we get into the more metaphysical fun part. Like, what would that person be? Where would we go? What compromises a human being? Are we merely a sum of all our atoms? Taking this point of view that an individual is only the sum of atoms that made up the physical body, which undergoes the process, to me, it's like they can't equate for the self. So if that assumption is true, then you just popped on the destination of the transporter pad. That must be you, because it has the exact arrangement of the atoms, which would mean that every time you beamed yourself, that version of you dies, because those atoms aren't really your atoms anymore. They're rematerialized into new atoms. And this is a new you, theoretically. And physically, it's a new you. You're still, the concept of self is still the same, but it's physically a new you. Which would mean that, every time you beamed out, that version of you died, then somewhere you get a revived or perhaps a new being. And all the memories right down to the point of transporting, which is just crazy to me. Now, nevertheless, this is going to be a subject there is no right or wrong answer to. We are debating semantics. We are debating Trek lore, and this is what we're here for. This is what we're all about. And to me, I do think you're kind of like kind of killing yourself and then kind of rematerializing yourself at the same time. Nevertheless, in our everyday lives, this concept of self, quote unquote self, or concept of a soul, there's something in us that is immeasurable and is very distinct from one person to the next. Especially if you've ever have a loved one that passed away and you see their body, it's just, there's nothing there. And it's kind of a shell of what they used to be because their self, in my opinion, their soul is gone. And a lot of times, including me, like you have a lot of cultures and religions kind of explain what happens to the soul when we die and where it goes from there and what the process occurs with that. And I think just from my research, Star Trek really avoids that concept altogether. There is this notion of a life force that exists beyond the physical body, confined in what they call the Star Trek universe. But to me, I feel like, personally, I am a Christian and follow and love Jesus Christ, so I know about my soul and the truth behind that. But I know specifically in Star Trek, they don't like to touch it because Gene Roddenberry was big into humanism and kind of didn't want to touch that with 10-foot pole, which I get because it's, again, you want something that unites everybody. But in the movie The Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, we see that the Vulcans have a katra, so it's a living spirit that can exist outside the body. And since Spock transferred his katra to Dr. McCoy, he was able to take his katra back into this new regenerated body that was found. What's more interesting with this metaphysical stuff is we have a couple more examples. So in the episode The Realm of Fear in TNG is an episode where Geordi says the famous, quote-unquote, transporting is really the safest way to travel. And Lieutenant Barclay, because of his fear of the transporter, it is implied that the subject, when undergoing the transporting process, is conscious, despite having the physical bodies disarranged into atoms. So he's like, we can feel everything that's going on. And so we know what's happening to us when we're being transported, but either we don't remember or we know we're dying, pretty much. And then this new person comes along, you don't remember it because it's not the same you. And this kind of strengthens the notion in the Star Trek world that there is some kind of life force that exists outside the body. However, with that TNG episode, The Realm of Fear, it was really poorly written, so we can just kind of set that one to the side. But even if you say we just collected all of this information on the human being precisely down to its quirks, and it doesn't violate even the Heisenberg principle, right? There's even like this concept of the Heisenberg principle in real life, and that is this principle that we can never know two properties with the same certainty. If our information of position are certain, then we don't know its velocity, vice versa. So that's the Heisenberg principle. Again, we're getting in the weeds here. And that is a law of physics that we have. How does Star Trek get around that? Don't worry, we have something called the Heisenberg compensator, I guess, to negate the Heisenberg principle. So it's simply, in the manual, just a Heisenberg compensator. How's it work? Nobody knows, because this is Star Trek, and we're not going to put that much work into cracking freaking laws of physics. So even if we can take all the information of the world and see what makes up a human being or what makes a human, there is still the physical laws of nature that we can't ever overcome. I don't think transporter technology will ever come around. It's just too much. It's just too much to overcome, and hopefully I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, and one day we do, but for the actual realistic portion and realistic goal of having this, it's pretty much near impossible. Just every paper I've read and every kind of like scientist who's been asked this question is kind of this uniform. It's like, it can't be done simply because of the Heisenberg principle alone. But let's not get even into the metaphysical and the ethical implications of that. And again, I feel like even listening to this episode and reading the script and going through like pre-show runs, this is heavy stuff. This is a lot. And this is a huge work. Nevertheless, I think it's tough to say when you essentially disassemble your body, I think you die. And is it a collection of atoms that get combined and taken apart that will create a consciousness within you? I don't know. But to me, I think you still kind of die and then you're reborn. It's very grim. It's not very uplifting messages, but I'm excited to see where Star Trek will take this in the future, if they'll deep dive into this, if they're going to, I don't know, create an episode where they just really hammer out the principles of it, or are they just happy to just have it be accepted because we have our compensators and we don't really have to ask too many questions about this right now. Either way, let me know what you think. Let me know if you're like, no, Jonathan, it's the same person. You're just kind of rematerializing. You're not dying. You don't feel anything. And I would love to hear from you. So please reach out on social media. It's always fun debating these like in-depth, in the weeds topics, because that's what I love about Star Trek. There's such a wealth, and there's a deep end of the pool. Then a lot of fandoms don't have that. Like they don't have a 10 to 12 foot deep end in the pool where you can like really get lost and bring up really great metaphysical questions like this. And that's, to me, what the best sci-fi is. I've said that for over 120 episodes, is that the best sci-fi can relate and talk about real life and translate to that. So it's something to think about. And Luna, I think that's all we have for today. But again, I just want to say thank you all so much for listening. And we're so happy to be back on the podcast. And again, thank you all so much for your loyalty and support. And Luna, let's wrap it up. I was, writing that episode out. And as we were talking about it as a team, I was like, this is a lot, especially for like a first episode back that we've, it's been a 3 or 4 months. We're going to cover this deep metaphysical question and also like this transporter question. And I love that. That's the best thing about Star Trek. Like I just got done saying, and it's a great fandom. So again, feel free to reach out. We're on the Mega Particle Podcast on Instagram. Thank you so much. We're almost at 85,000, which is crazy. So happy to be doing that and get all the love and support from you guys. But yeah, feel free to reach out, debate this topic with me. Like I said, I love doing that. And we have some great DS9 shows coming out. Remember, take care of yourselves out there. And I know holiday seasons can be rough for people, and the Christmas season can be rough. But just remember to take care of yourselves and your mental health. And you're valuable. We want you around, and always remember that. And second star to the right, straight on till morning.